Hey everyone, welcome to our first lecture on research design. So this is going to be a review of your research design course that you've already taken to come to be at this class. And it's just a refresher to kind of reframe how you should approach the course and give you an idea of the sort of things I want you to be prioritizing moving forward, building your own research. So what is research design? A lot of this is going to be about terminology and reframing these kind of key terms that you should know moving forward. Research design is a core component of methodology, which is the way we produce research and ultimately the way we produce knowledge. It's all about how scientists and investigators, researchers test their ideas about the world and find out their ideas about what truth is and what the truth is to these kind of phenomena that we see in the world. So this spans the scope of STEM fields, right? Science, technology, biofields, all the way to us as social scientists where we study people, right? The research design specifically is a plan that guides the investigator in collecting, analyzing, interpreting observations. It gives a plan and a robust way, a systematic way to look and observe the world, right? It allows us to be a little bit more sure of the things that we're finding when we're conducting research. We're going to focus in this lecture on why it's important to have a plan and how we can collect evidence and the different ways that we can do that. A systematic plan makes research robust and reproducible. Robust means we can be certain in it, and reproducible means that we can do it again, right? So if a phenomena is true, then we should be able to find evidence of this phenomena more than once. It allows us to have some confidence in our findings. Now, there's always going to be uncertainty when we're conducting research and when we're conducting science, but we can be more certain and reduce that uncertainty by having good game plans about our research. A good research design means better and more reliable research. It helps us also make the best out of constraints that you face when you're conducting research. Research is very exploratory, so it helps you stay consistent and stick to a game plan. There are additionally obviously going to be financial constraints, time constraints that limit a researcher. So a systematic plan helps you stay within the parameters of these limits as well. Our plans and these limitations also hedge how much we know and what kind of truths we can derive about the world that we live in. And so whenever we're producing research, we're going to be hedging all of these things within the context of uncertainty. And uncertainty may seem scary, but it's actually a really ethical way to approach research. If we say we're 100% sure of all these things that we're finding in a given study, then we're not recognizing the limitations that we had and the biases we may hold. So we're going to approach particularly our study of quantitative social scientists with this framework of embracing and understanding uncertainty and saying uncertainty is okay, but we want to do all of these things to reduce our amounts of uncertainty, right? And we reduce that uncertainty through having a good and solid research design plan and really solid foundations of the statistical analyses that we're going to conduct. And so we'll get into that part a little bit later on in the semester. But all of this is to say that having a plan makes us better scientists, better researchers, and helps us work within the limits that we have. And there's a few different kinds of research that we can conduct within the academy, right? So as social scientists, there's kind of two main camps that people fall into. The first is quantitative, and we're starting here because this is my area of expertise and also the focus of this class. Within the world of quantitative work, we're thinking about large groups and populations and understanding patterns across these groups. We're aggregating over these groups and we're generalizing findings with numbers, right? And so a good example of some qualitative data is if I asked you, how satisfied are you with this class so far on a scale of 1 to 5? That number gives me a concrete understanding of how happy you are in the class, and then I can aggregate that pattern over the class to see whether the whole class is happy or not, right? With some level of uncertainty. And so that's the way I'd probably have you guys approach this idea of quantitative, right? So the most reduced way to think about it is numbers, right? But we're using this world of large N. So N is kind of a shorthand that we'll use mathematically to talk about observations. So lots of people, lots of observations when we're talking about surveys of individuals, and we're aggregating and generalizing findings to create patterns about people or understand patterns about people. One of the key ways we do that as social scientists is through surveys, right? So if I ran a survey in the class about how happy the class is, what kinds of assignments you like and don't like, and I'm asking you maybe these sort of scale type questions, that's a really common tactic that social scientists actually use to understand people's political attitudes, how much they like a political policy, or maybe how happy they are with a current president, like their level of approval. And so surveys are a key tool to understanding the world around us for social scientists. It allows us to collect large amounts of data about people, and usually it's not cheap, but if we use the internet and survey tools through the internet, we've been able to reduce the cost generally of surveys, but that is another limiting factor of surveys is the financial end of it. So that's one of our limitations within survey research. Additionally, we can do things like experiments in surveys, which allows us to kind of identify a causal mechanism, right? So there's multiple camps of research. There's observational research and there's causal research. And if you're just observing things, you're looking at associations, but you cannot exactly say that X caused Y. But if you want causal research, you can do something like an experiment, which has randomly assigned groups, and you can see whether a stimulus affected one group or another, because one's the control, one's the treatment group, and the groups are identical for everything else except for that stimuli. So you can kind of get an idea of whether something actually caused the other thing. So there's a kind of couple different camps within that world of experiment versus observational, but they all can be done under this umbrella of surveys. Another area of research that I actually do on my own is this kind of world of content analysis or text analysis. A fancy word for that is natural language processing, but it's a method of statistical analysis that looks at text or written words. So you can look at things like protests, but you also can look at things like Twitter data and aggregate social movements over years and look at, so some of my research looks at the Me Too movement on Twitter, and I'm able to derive patterns in communication and ebbs and flows in political action based on these kind of statistical methods that look at text. It's really fascinating. So this all kind of falls under this umbrella of quantitative work, and is usually happening through statistical analysis on tools like R. So R in RStudio, which we'll be using in this class. There's also some other platforms out there, SPSS. Some people use Python, some people use Stata. There's a lot of different ways. I think political scientists, especially like the newer guard of political scientists, tend to be using R because it's open source and free. But you'll also find a lot of political scientists and social scientists using platforms like SPSS or Stata. Not bad in any way, but something like Stata is a bit more expensive. And so we're using R to increase accessibility and kind of increase your guys' bang for your buck in terms of the software and language that you're learning. So quantitative research, thinking about numbers, large groups, generalizing patterns across people, using stats to kind of derive these patterns and make predictions. And we're using tools like R. There's also this other vein of collecting evidence and garnering truths about the world that is called qualitative research, right? And so instead of looking at numbers and aggregating across other groups, we're looking at a small group of people or events, and we're focused on the details, right? So instead of aggregating across groups, we're looking at details about an observed event or group of people, right? So instead of how excited are you at the class, I would talk about something like, if I'm doing like a case study about a class and we were in person, I would say the mood of the class was very somber the first day. I could tell that the students were very nervous, but as the day went on, it got a little bit more casual and the students kind of felt a little bit more at ease. That's qualitative data about an event, which would have been our first class in person. And so they're kind of juxtaposed, right? Qualitative's large N, lots of observations, aggregating. Qualitative is all about the details and getting into the nitty gritty about a smaller group. So there are pros and cons of both. Both are valid and wonderful ways to approach garnering evidence about phenomena. Some of the main ways that folks do this is through something like case studies, describing an event or phenomena in detail that goes back into the past. Interviews are the analysis of a verbal conversation. Observational fieldwork or ethnography is describing those event or people in real time. So you're actually going to that place, talking to those people, watching the event. And then I wouldn't say that theory really sits within this framework of qualitative, but I'm going to say it because it's a little bit closer to qualitative than quantitative. But theorists or political theorists are people that are guided by unpacking the assumptions and values about how the world works through kind of a sort of like a philosophical mindset, right? So instead of garnering evidence through this sort of scientific method, because a lot of qualitative work falls within this framework of the scientific method, it just uses different tactics. They're moving completely outside of that and working on building their own ideas in a way that kind of pushes the theory of that thing forward. So it kind of operates outside that framework, but nothing you guys need to worry about, just something you need to know that exists within the field of political science. Our main focus is quantitative. We're going to learn how to use R. We're going to gain some confidence in describing our data, visualizing our data. And you're going to be able to use this to create a final research paper and be able to kind of create your own research moving forward. So I hope that this is going to be really an empowering and exciting experience for you. And so we're going to end here and then move on to talk a little bit about the scientific method.